1995, deep in the remote mountains of Oregon, a young hiker named Evan Carter mysteriously vanishes without a trace. The search for him yields nothing but torn clothing and speculation, with some locals whispering about a virus linked to the region's wildlife. Others blame something more sinister lurking in the woods. That same year, young Blake Lovell accompanies his stern and traditional father, Grady, on a hunting trip in the same area. Grady teaches his son the importance of patience and silence in the wild, warning him that the forest has its own rules. As night falls, they hear a guttural growl in the distance. Through the trees, they spot a mysterious humanoid figure moving unnaturally fast. Fear grips them as the creature stalks closer, its glowing eyes reflecting the moonlight. Grady pulls Blake into an elevated hunting blind, where they stay hidden until dawn. 30 years later, Blake is a middle-aged man living in San Francisco with his daughter, Ginger, and his workaholic wife, Charlotte. The strain in their marriage is evident, as Blake struggles with anger issues reminiscent of his father's, often clashing with Charlotte's more pragmatic nature. His relationship with Ginger is better, but he fears she sees him as unstable. One day, he receives an unexpected letter, a death certificate for Grady, who had gone missing years prior, along with the deed and keys to his childhood home in the Oregon mountains. Seeing an opportunity to reconnect with his family, Blake suggests they take a trip there to escape their daily tensions. Charlotte hesitantly agrees, hoping the time away might help repair their fractured marriage. As they reach the small town near their destination, they stop at a local diner where they meet Derek, a rugged, friendly man who offers to guide them to the house. The locals give wary glances when they overhear their conversation, but no one speaks up. As the sun sets, Derek leads them through winding back roads towards the old Lovell cabin. Suddenly, something slams into their vehicle, forcing them off the road. Before they can react, an unseen force drags Derek away into the darkness. Blake steps out, only to be scratched deeply on the arm by something fast and powerful. Bleeding and disoriented, he hurriedly gets Charlotte and Ginger to the house, where he fumbles with the generator, finally restoring power just as the creature's eerie howls echo through the forest. Inside, Charlotte tends to Blake's wound, but it is already turning an unnatural shade. His fever spikes, sweat beads on his forehead, and he begins to experience disorienting sounds, whispers in the wind, distant growls, the beating of his own heart amplified. That night, he loses a tooth, then another, blood pooling in his mouth. His body aches, his limbs twitch involuntarily. When he presses his ear to the door to listen for the creature outside, it suddenly grabs his foot through the pet door, slicing into his flesh. Charlotte saves him by smashing its hand with a hammer, forcing it to retreat. By morning, Blake's condition worsens. His fingernails loosen and fall out, replaced by thick, sharp claws. Patches of fur emerge along his arms, and his muscles ripple painfully as his bones stretch and reshape. He struggles to form words, his voice a guttural rasp. He gnaws at his infected arm in an animalistic attempt to soothe the pain, horrifying Charlotte and Ginger. When Charlotte looks outside, she spots an abandoned truck half buried in overgrowth. Desperate for an escape, she hot-wires it. But before they can drive away, the creature appears again, slamming into the windshield. The family flees to the greenhouse, climbing onto its roof as the monster prowls below. Understanding his worsening state, Blake lures the beast away so Charlotte and Ginger can return to the house. He disappears into the woods, but minutes later, a disfigured, limping Blake stumbles back. His transformation is nearly complete. His teeth are now fangs, his eyes feral, his voice nothing more than snarls. He retches, vomiting a severed human finger onto the ground. Charlotte shields Ginger as Blake approaches, his posture more creature than man. Then, the beast returns, crashing through the door. As it lunges at Charlotte and Ginger, Blake intercepts it, tackling it to the ground. They fight viciously, their howls and snarls reverberating through the house. In a final, desperate act, Blake bites deep into the creature's neck, tearing out its throat. As it dies, he recognizes a faded tattoo on its arm. It's his father, Grady, long lost to the same infection. Realizing what he has become, Blake stumbles outside, the last remnants of his humanity slipping away. The morning light reveals the full extent of his transformation. He is now one of them. Overcome by instinct, he turns toward his family. His lips pull back in a snarl, his claws twitch. Charlotte and Ginger flee to the barn, barricading the door. Blake follows, his enhanced senses allowing him to track them with ease. He uses his claws to pry the door open, stepping inside with deliberate slowness. Charlotte, anticipating his approach, had set a bear trap in the darkness. Blake steps into it, the metal jaws clamping down on his leg. He lets out a pained, inhuman roar, but instead of stopping, he gnaws at his own foot, severing it to continue the hunt. Charlotte and Ginger sprint into the surrounding forest, desperate to find shelter. In a last effort, they hide in a hunting blind, just as Blake did all those years ago. With the sun rising, Blake climbs up after them. Charlotte holds the rifle, trembling. Blake, still partially human in his eyes, pauses. He knows what must be done. With one final act of clarity, he lunges, giving Charlotte no choice. She pulls the trigger. The shot rings out, and Blake collapses into the blind. As he takes his final breaths, his eyes soften, locking onto his family one last time. Charlotte and Ginger emerge from the blind, walking in silence. The sun bathes the forest in golden light as they reach the clearing, where a breathtaking valley stretches before them. Ginger remembers Blake describing it from his childhood, and for a moment, they stand together, taking in its beauty. Then, without a word, they continue their way down the path, leaving the forest and the past behind them. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe.